Amara Johnson walked into the bank with calm confidence, her steps steady and deliberate. The bright morning sun reflected off the glass doors, creating a small shimmer on the polished floor as she entered. It was a regular branch of a well-known bank, one she had been dealing with for years. But today felt different. Today, she needed to make a withdrawal for her company, a request that should have been routine, yet her intuition whispered that this visit would not go as smoothly as usual. Amara was not just anyone walking into the bank. She was the CEO of Johnson Tech Solutions, a company she had built from the ground up. Her life was filled with challenges, but none had ever shaken her determination. She had faced doubts, rejections, and obstacles at every step of her journey. Yet, she always met them with intelligence, patience, and a calm assertiveness. She had learned early on that how one carried oneself could influence how others responded. Her heels clicked softly against the marble floor as she approached the teller counters. The bank was moderately busy, with a few customers quietly attending to their accounts. The hum of conversation blended with the soft tapping of keyboards behind the counter. Amara's eyes scanned the room, noting the faces of employees and customers alike. She had been here many times before, always treated with the professionalism and courtesy due to any valued client. But today, something felt different. She approached the counter where a middle-aged man in a crisp suit and tie stood, the bank manager. He looked professional enough, but there was something about his expression, an almost imperceptible hesitation, a pause that didn't sit right with her. "Good morning," she said warmly, placing her company documents on the counter. "I'd like to make a withdrawal from my company account." The manager glanced at the documents, then back at her, his expression flickering between confusion and discomfort. I'm not sure about this," he replied hesitantly. "Can I see some identification and authorization documents?" Amara had anticipated this part. She handed over her identification, her business card, and the official company documents that authorized her access to the funds. "These are all in order," she said calmly. "You can verify them if you need, but everything is perfectly legitimate." The manager took the papers slowly, his eyes scanning them in a way that suggested more than simple verification. Amara noticed a subtle shift in his body language: tight shoulders, fidgeting hands, a slight stiffening as he examined her credentials. He looked at her as if trying to measure whether she belonged there, a silent judgment that stung more than any words could. Amara had faced many challenges in her career, but she knew this was different. This was not about policy or procedure. It was about perception and bias, about someone's assumption clouding professional judgment. She had encountered discrimination in boardrooms, client meetings, and even casual networking events, but she had always handled it with grace and intelligence. Today, however, she realized she could not simply let it slide. "Is there an issue, sir?" she asked, her tone polite but firm. "I have all the documentation required. This is my company's account, and I am fully authorized to access it." The manager swallowed, avoiding direct eye contact. "It's just, the documents are a bit unusual. I'm not saying you're not authorized, but I have to follow the rules. You understand, right?" Amara took a deep breath. She had learned that patience was a weapon in situations like this. Anger or frustration would only give the other person a sense of power. Instead, she maintained her composure, her calm confidence radiating from her in a way that made others in the room take notice. "I understand that rules exist, and I respect them," she replied evenly. "But in this case, there is no violation. All documents are complete and verified. I need this withdrawal processed promptly." He hesitated again, then muttered something about needing to check with the branch supervisor. Amara's heart sank slightly. It had been just a few minutes, but she could already feel the growing tension. This was more than simple bureaucracy, it was an unspoken doubt about her authority, her credibility, even her presence in a place where she was fully entitled to be. Other customers at nearby counters began to glance over, sensing the unusual exchange. Some whispered quietly to themselves, a mixture of curiosity and concern. Amara could feel their eyes on her, and while she did not seek attention, she knew the weight of the moment. This was a test, and she intended to pass it with dignity. She straightened her shoulders and met the manager's gaze. "I am the CEO of Johnson Tech Solutions," she said, her voice steady. "I built this company from nothing. My company's funds are rightfully mine to manage, and I expect professional service here. I am asking you, not requesting, to process this withdrawal without further delay." The manager's face tightened. It was clear that her words had caught him off guard. He had expected meek compliance, or at least hesitation from someone who might feel powerless. He had not anticipated the quiet strength and authority in Amara's tone. She noticed a young teller nearby watching the exchange with interest. His expression suggested admiration and surprise at how she handled the situation. That gave her a small sense of satisfaction, proof that strength and confidence could influence the environment, even in small ways. Amara's mind briefly wandered to the many times she had faced similar doubts throughout her career. Investors who hesitated to fund her projects, clients who questioned her competence, even colleagues who underestimated her abilities. She had learned that these moments were not obstacles but opportunities to assert her value and to demand respect. She decided it was time to escalate in a calm and controlled manner. "Please allow me a moment," she said, stepping slightly to the side. She took out her phone and dialed her assistant. Within seconds, she explained the situation clearly, calmly, and without emotion. "We need to verify my authority over the account immediately," she instructed. "I want confirmation that this withdrawal can proceed without delay." While on the call, she observed the manager. He seemed increasingly uneasy, his movements jittery, his eyes darting nervously toward the documents and back at her. It was a subtle but unmistakable sign that he was realizing the gravity of underestimating her authority. After a few minutes, the call ended. Her assistant had confirmed everything, her authority was unquestionable, and the bank's records verified it. She hung up, her expression composed but sharp, ready to confront the manager directly. She returned to the counter, her demeanor calm but assertive. "The verification is complete," she said. "There is no reason to delay this transaction further. Please proceed with the withdrawal immediately." The manager hesitated once more, but now there was a flicker of recognition in his eyes, a realization that he had underestimated her. The air was tense, filled with the unspoken acknowledgement that this encounter had shifted the balance of power. Amara's calm confidence, combined with her decisive action, sent a clear message: she would not tolerate bias or incompetence, even in spaces where it might be subtle or hidden. This was not just about money or a company transaction, it was about respect, dignity, and the recognition of her authority. By the time the withdrawal was finally approved, several customers had taken notice. Some whispered quietly, while others simply watched in silent admiration. Amara remained composed throughout, handling the situation with grace and clarity, fully aware that the small victory here was a reflection of the larger battles she faced in life and business. As she collected the funds, Amara reflected briefly on the incident. It was a reminder that even success, status, and wealth could not shield one from bias. But it was also a reminder that strength, intelligence, and composure were powerful tools to confront and overcome such challenges. She walked out of the bank that day with more than just money. She walked out with a renewed sense of determination, ready to ensure that respect and professionalism would be demanded wherever she went. And though the manager may not have fully realized it at the time, this encounter was just the beginning of the consequences for underestimating her. Amara's calm decisiveness had already set the stage for the next step, a step that would leave no room for doubt about her authority and her expectations. Amara had barely stepped back from the counter when she noticed the manager shifting uncomfortably behind his desk. His hands were tense, and his eyes darted toward the other staff members, almost as if he were seeking some reassurance that what he was doing was correct. But it was clear to Amara that no reassurance could justify his hesitation or the way he had treated her. Every gesture he made seemed to show his growing awareness that he had misjudged the situation. She didn't raise her voice. She had learned that power often spoke louder than words, and her calm confidence was already having an effect. The bank manager, who had initially appeared so confident and composed, now looked unsure, caught between protocol and the undeniable authority Amara held. She observed him closely, noting every subtle movement. The twitch in his jaw, the slight frown as he fumbled with his pen, and the way he avoided direct eye contact, it all told her that he was beginning to understand that he had underestimated her. Other customers around the bank began to notice the tension as well. A young woman waiting to deposit a check glanced over, curiosity written across her face. An elderly man adjusting his glasses paused mid-transaction, clearly sensing that something unusual was unfolding. Amara could feel their silent attention, but she did not let it distract her. She remained composed, letting the manager see that she was in control, and that her authority was not something to be questioned lightly. "Sir," she said gently, but firmly, "I need to know why this transaction is not being processed. All my documents are complete and verified. My company's account is fully in order. There is no reason for delay." The manager's voice shook slightly as he responded. I just have to make sure that everything is in accordance with our internal policies. It's not that you're not authorized, but, rules are rules." Amara took a deep breath. She had expected bureaucratic excuses, she had encountered them many times in her career. But there was something more at play here, something unspoken. She could feel it in the way he scrutinized her, in the subtle doubt that lingered in his tone. It wasn't just about rules, it was about perception, about an assumption that she might not belong in this space, even when she had every right to be there. She decided to speak with clarity, leaving no room for misinterpretation. "I understand that rules exist to maintain order," she said, her voice steady. "But rules are meant to serve people, not to undermine them. I have followed every requirement. My authority is unquestionable. I am asking, respectfully but firmly, that you process this withdrawal immediately." Her words hung in the air like a quiet challenge. The manager swallowed, clearly realizing that hesitation or further delay would no longer appear professional, it would only reveal his lack of judgment. He glanced toward a colleague, a younger teller who was watching the exchange with interest. The teller's expression was one of admiration, a subtle acknowledgement of the way Amara carried herself. That small recognition strengthened Amara's resolve. She could feel her own heart steadying. Every situation, no matter how frustrating, was an opportunity to assert respect and fairness. She had faced skepticism countless times, investors who doubted her abilities, clients who questioned her leadership, colleagues who underestimated her, but she had never allowed doubt to define her. Each encounter had taught her patience, strategy, and the importance of measured action. "Sir," she continued, "this is not simply a transaction. This is about respecting professional authority. I am the CEO of this company, and my account must be handled accordingly. Any further delay is not just inconvenient, it is unacceptable." The manager shifted again, a slight tremor in his hands as he adjusted the papers before him. Amara could see the conflict in his eyes. He was torn between his interpretation of policy and the undeniable reality that she held the authority he was trying to question. The tension in the room was palpable, drawing the attention of everyone around. Amara realized that a direct approach might be necessary. She stepped slightly closer, maintaining eye contact, her presence calm but commanding. "If there is uncertainty, I am happy to verify everything directly with my team or through official channels. But I will not accept hesitation based on assumptions or doubts about my authority. Do you understand?" The manager hesitated, then nodded slowly. His mouth opened as if to speak, but he seemed unsure how to continue. It was clear to Amara that he now recognized the gravity of the situation. His initial confidence, perhaps fueled by a sense of control, had vanished in the face of her composed determination. Amara decided to give him a moment to process. She stepped to the side, took out her phone, and called her assistant. The assistant answered immediately, and Amara explained the situation clearly, calmly, and without emotion. "We need immediate verification that the withdrawal can be processed," she instructed. "Please confirm that all documents and authorizations are in order. I want this resolved now." While she waited for the confirmation, she observed the manager's reaction. He was visibly uneasy, his hands fidgeting with a pen as he glanced repeatedly at her documents. The uncertainty in his body language made it clear that he realized he had underestimated her. Every second of delay was a small victory for her patience and composure. The assistant returned her call quickly. "Everything is verified," Amara was told. "You are fully authorized. The withdrawal can proceed immediately." Amara ended the call and faced the manager once again. Her voice remained calm but firm. "The verification has been completed. There is no reason to delay this transaction any further. Please proceed." The manager swallowed, his expression a mixture of frustration and resignation. He could no longer hide the fact that he had been wrong. The quiet authority Amara displayed left him with little room to maneuver. He began processing the withdrawal, his movements slow but deliberate, as if to ensure that every step was technically correct. Meanwhile, the other bank staff and customers observed the situation with growing interest. A quiet sense of admiration spread among the bystanders. Amara's poise and assertiveness had transformed what could have been an ordinary transaction into a moment of accountability. It was clear that she would not allow herself or her company to be undermined, and her composure inspired those watching. As the withdrawal proceeded, Amara allowed herself a small moment of reflection. She thought about the many times in her life when she had faced doubt or dismissal because of assumptions made about her ability, her position, or even her identity. She had learned that such moments were not obstacles but opportunities to demonstrate strength and professionalism. By handling the situation with calm authority, she was asserting not just her own respect but setting an example for others as well. Finally, the transaction was complete. Amara collected the funds, neatly organized and secure in an envelope. She thanked the staff politely, her demeanor still composed and professional. She knew that the manager had learned a lesson, whether he realized it fully or not. She had not only ensured that her company's funds were properly managed but had also demonstrated that hesitation and bias would not be tolerated. Even as she turned to leave, she felt the eyes of the customers and staff on her. There was admiration, curiosity, and even a touch of awe. She walked past them with quiet confidence, knowing that this encounter had left an impression. Her calm authority had changed the dynamic of the room, and in that small victory, she found both satisfaction and renewed determination. As she stepped out into the bright sunlight once more, Amara reflected on the experience. Success and position did not shield her from bias, but patience, clarity, and confidence were powerful tools to confront it. She had handled the situation with intelligence and dignity, demonstrating that authority was not just about power, it was about composure, presence, and the courage to demand respect. And while this was only the beginning of addressing the challenges posed by the manager's attitude, Amara knew that she had already taken the first and most important step. She had made her expectations clear, set boundaries, and ensured that her authority would be respected going forward. The small victory in the bank branch was more than a business transaction, it was a statement of strength, resilience, and unwavering professionalism. Amara stepped aside, her phone still in hand, as she listened to her assistant confirm the verification of her account. Every word from the assistant reinforced what she already knew. There was no doubt about her authority or her right to access the funds. She smiled faintly, but it was a calm, controlled smile. There was no need for anger, no need for confrontation beyond what was necessary. Strength often spoke louder than words, and she had mastered the art of quiet power. She glanced back at the bank manager. His eyes flicked up at her briefly, and for the first time, there was a flicker of realization in his expression. The confidence he had carried into this room had begun to crumble. He was no longer sure of the rules he had been so certain of, nor of his ability to handle the situation properly. Amara observed the subtle signs: tightened jaw, shifting weight from one foot to another, the slight frown forming between his eyebrows. He was aware, finally, that he had underestimated her. Other customers were still watching, some openly now. The young teller from the earlier part of the encounter was leaning slightly forward, curiosity and admiration written on his face. Amara noticed, but she remained composed. This was not about showing off, it was about asserting fairness and professionalism. She was aware that every action, every word, and even her silence was sending a message. She would not allow the situation to escalate unnecessarily, but neither would she back down. She lifted her phone and made a quick call to her board member, explaining the situation succinctly. "Everything is verified," she said calmly. "The bank manager has been hesitant to process our withdrawal, but my authority is confirmed. I want to ensure that if any issues arise, we have official documentation that can support immediate action." As she spoke, she observed the manager again. His fingers were now tapping nervously on the counter, his eyes avoiding hers. He had been trained in policy, in procedure, and in what he considered proper protocol. But he had not been trained in responding to someone who knew their rights, someone who carried themselves with both calm authority and decisive action. Amara had effectively turned the encounter into a lesson about professionalism, fairness, and the consequences of underestimating a client. "Thank you," she said to her board member before ending the call. She replaced her phone in her bag and turned her attention fully to the manager. Her voice was steady but firm, carrying a tone that made it clear she would not tolerate further delay. "The verification has been completed. There is no reason to delay this transaction any longer. Please proceed immediately." The manager hesitated again, as if weighing his options. He glanced toward his colleagues, perhaps seeking guidance or support, but the reality was inescapable. He had been caught in a situation where hesitation equaled failure, and delay equaled acknowledgement that he had acted inappropriately. His mind raced, but Amara's presence made it impossible to find an easy solution. She had cornered the problem not with anger, but with confidence, clarity, and undeniable authority. She watched closely as he reached for the necessary forms, his movements deliberate but tense. It was clear that he was aware of the eyes around him, the other bank staff and the few customers who had been observing the encounter. The room had shifted subtly, filled with a quiet energy. Amara could sense it, a mixture of respect, curiosity, and perhaps even a little awe. She had not intended to create a spectacle, but the power of composure and decisive action often drew attention naturally. As he began processing the withdrawal, Amara remained calm, keeping her attention fixed on him without displaying impatience or frustration. She had learned that patience in such situations was not passive, it was an active strategy. By allowing him to proceed while maintaining her presence, she ensured that every step of the transaction reinforced the reality that she would not be undermined or questioned unjustly. Meanwhile, her mind reflected on the broader implications of this encounter. She thought of the countless times she had faced subtle prejudice and bias in her career. Investors who had doubted her ideas because of assumptions, colleagues who had questioned her leadership without reason, clients who had hesitated to trust her judgment. All of it had taught her the importance of composure, strategy, and asserting authority when necessary. Today was another example, another opportunity to turn a moment of bias into a demonstration of professionalism and strength. The manager's hands moved slowly, filling out forms and entering information on the computer. Every delay was a small reminder that hesitation had consequences, and every glance he cast toward Amara reinforced the fact that he had misjudged her. The tension in the room was noticeable, but Amara remained composed, her calm demeanor a stark contrast to his uncertainty. She could see the young teller watching intently, learning perhaps a lesson he would not forget. Sometimes, Amara reflected, it was not just about resolving a transaction, it was about showing others what confidence, dignity, and calm authority looked like in action. By handling the situation with poise, she was teaching more than just the manager, she was setting an example for everyone in the room. Finally, the withdrawal was completed. The manager handed over the funds, his hands slightly trembling. Amara accepted them with grace, counting them quickly to ensure accuracy, but without a hint of impatience. She smiled politely, a small but unmistakable signal that she had handled the situation with professionalism. "Thank you," she said simply. "I appreciate your cooperation." As she prepared to leave the counter, she reflected on the encounter. This was more than just a business transaction, it was a lesson in authority, respect, and the subtle ways bias could manifest. She had remained calm, collected, and decisive, demonstrating that power was not measured by force or volume, but by clarity, presence, and the ability to act when necessary. The manager's face showed a mix of relief and regret. It was evident that he had learned an important lesson, though it would likely take time for him to fully understand it. Amara had not raised her voice, had not lashed out, but she had made it clear that hesitation born of doubt or bias would not be tolerated. The impact of her presence, her words, and her calm authority was unmistakable. As she walked toward the exit, she noticed the subtle reactions of the other customers and staff. There were quiet nods of acknowledgement, whispers of admiration, and a sense of realization that they had witnessed a rare moment of decisive, respectful authority. Amara's focus, however, remained on the lesson she had learned herself: patience, clarity, and calm action could transform even the most tense situation into a demonstration of strength and professionalism. Outside, the sunlight felt warm on her face. She adjusted her bag over her shoulder, taking a moment to reflect on what had just occurred. This was a reminder that authority and respect were not automatically granted, even when one had every right to them. They had to be asserted with composure, intelligence, and a readiness to act. And when done correctly, the effect could be profound not just for oneself, but for those who witnessed it. Amara knew that this was not the end of her interaction with the bank. There would be follow-up, there would be accountability, and there would be steps taken to ensure that no employee could treat her or her company unfairly in the future. But she also knew that the first and most important step had already been taken. By asserting her authority calmly and decisively, she had set the tone for what would come next. Even as she walked away from the branch, she felt a sense of quiet satisfaction. The situation had tested her patience and composure, but she had passed with dignity. The withdrawal had been completed, her authority confirmed, and a subtle but important lesson had been delivered. She had turned a moment of hesitation and doubt into a demonstration of strength, professionalism, and resilience. Amara's thoughts drifted briefly to her team at Johnson Tech Solutions. She knew that leadership was about more than strategy and decision-making. It was also about presence, confidence, and the ability to act decisively when faced with challenges. Today had been a reminder of that truth, and it would serve as a lesson she could share with her team. Strength was not just about being right, it was about acting with clarity, composure, and authority in the face of hesitation and doubt. With the funds secured and the situation resolved, Amara left the bank, her steps measured and confident. The encounter had been challenging, but she had handled it in a way that reinforced her authority, commanded respect, and maintained her professionalism. She knew that what she had done would have ripple effects not just within the bank, but for anyone who observed her calm, decisive response to an unfair situation. And as she walked toward her car, she knew the next steps would be just as important. The manager had been challenged, but the resolution would require action beyond words. That realization brought a sense of anticipation, a recognition that authority and fairness required both presence and follow-through. Amara was ready, calm, and confident, to take whatever steps were necessary to ensure that respect and professionalism were maintained not just for herself, but for her company and everyone she represented. Amara stepped back into the bank, this time with a sense of purpose that was impossible to ignore. The funds she had requested earlier were secured, verified, and accounted for, yet the incident with the bank manager still weighed on her mind. This was not just about a simple withdrawal, it was about respect, professionalism, and accountability. The manager had hesitated, questioned her authority, and allowed doubt to interfere with his duties. For someone like Amara, who had fought hard to build her company and her reputation, such hesitation was unacceptable. She walked directly toward the manager, her heels clicking softly against the marble floor. Each step seemed to echo in the quiet bank, drawing attention from the few customers still present. Amara did not need an audience, but she was aware that every eye on her added weight to the moment. The manager looked up, his expression tightening as he noticed her approach. There was a flicker of recognition and understanding that this encounter was far from over. "Sir," she began, her voice calm but carrying an unmistakable authority, "we need to discuss what happened earlier. I understand that verification was necessary, but your hesitation in handling my withdrawal was inappropriate and unprofessional." The manager opened his mouth to respond but hesitated. He had expected a quiet, polite acknowledgement of the situation, perhaps a simple apology. He had not expected Amara to confront him directly, nor had he anticipated the calm decisiveness in her tone. She continued without interruption, letting her presence fill the room. "This is not about personal feelings," she said, her eyes steady on his. "It is about professional responsibility. As the CEO of Johnson Tech Solutions, I am fully authorized to access these funds. Your hesitation and doubt have no place in a professional setting, and they cannot be tolerated." The manager shifted uneasily, clearly aware that he had crossed a line. He had been trained in policy and procedure, but he had not been prepared to respond to someone who carried authority with calm confidence. Every word Amara spoke reinforced the reality that hesitation born from bias or doubt was not acceptable, no matter how polite or careful one tried to be. Amara took a deep breath and stepped slightly closer, maintaining eye contact without aggression. "I am not here to belittle you," she continued, "but I am here to ensure that professionalism is upheld. What you did earlier was a failure of judgment, and it must be addressed." The manager swallowed hard. His eyes flicked toward his colleagues, who were watching quietly, and then back at Amara. He realized that the situation had shifted entirely. No longer was this a simple verification process, this was a test of accountability, a moment where he was being evaluated not just by Amara but by everyone present in the bank. His initial confidence had been replaced with unease, and it was clear that he understood the gravity of his actions. Amara paused, letting her words settle in. She had always believed that confrontation, when necessary, should be precise, calm, and authoritative. Anger or impatience could cloud judgment, but clarity and composure demanded respect. This was one of those moments. She had come prepared to ensure that accountability was clear and immediate, and she would not allow the manager to dismiss or minimize his error. "I have decided," she said slowly, "that immediate action is required. Your hesitation earlier demonstrated unprofessional behavior that cannot be ignored. Therefore, I am terminating your position as branch manager, effective immediately." The words hung in the air, striking the manager with the weight of finality. He blinked, stunned, as if struggling to comprehend what he had just heard. Amara's calm authority left no room for negotiation or excuses. This was not a decision made out of emotion, but out of necessity and action required to uphold professionalism, fairness, and respect for her and her company. The other bank employees shifted uncomfortably, whispering quietly among themselves. Some glanced at each other in surprise, while others simply observed, understanding the seriousness of the moment. Amara remained composed, her eyes fixed on the manager, ensuring that the lesson was clear: hesitation, doubt, and unprofessional behavior had consequences. The manager opened his mouth to speak, stammering an explanation, but Amara held up her hand, signaling that she would not entertain excuses. "I will not accept explanations that attempt to justify hesitation or doubt in this matter," she said firmly. "Professional responsibility is non-negotiable. Your actions earlier compromised the standard of service expected by this institution, and they will not be tolerated." For a moment, silence filled the room. The customers, who had been quietly observing, seemed to sense the weight of the situation. Amara's composure, coupled with the clarity of her decision, created a palpable tension that underscored the lesson being delivered. The young teller, who had watched the earlier exchanges with curiosity, now had a full understanding of the consequences of hesitation and the importance of confidence in professional settings. The manager finally nodded, his face pale and expression subdued. He understood, at least on some level, that his actions had led to this outcome. It was a difficult lesson, but one that could not be avoided. Amara had not acted out of anger or spite, she had acted out of principle, ensuring that professionalism and respect were maintained. Amara turned slightly, addressing the remaining staff. Let this serve as a reminder to everyone here that professional responsibility is paramount, she said. Doubt or hesitation must never interfere with proper procedure, and respect for clients is non-negotiable. Today's incident demonstrates the importance of clarity, accountability, and composure in every professional interaction. The staff members nodded, some quietly murmuring in agreement. It was clear that the impact of this moment would linger, not only for the manager but for everyone present. Amara's presence, her words, and her decisive action had created an example of how authority should be exercised not with aggression, but with confidence, clarity, and fairness. As the manager collected his belongings, the weight of the situation seemed to settle over the branch. Amara remained calm, observing him leave without a hint of triumph or satisfaction. Her goal had never been to humiliate him, but to ensure accountability and to reinforce the importance of professionalism. This was leadership in action, and it required poise, courage, and the ability to act decisively when necessary. Once the manager had exited, Amara turned to the remaining staff, her tone softer but no less firm. I expect every employee here to maintain professionalism at all times, she said. Respect for clients, clarity in action, and accountability for decisions are essential. This is not negotiable, and I trust that each of you understands the importance of these principles. The staff nodded again, more confidently this time, understanding that this encounter had been a moment of clarity, not punishment. Amara had demonstrated that accountability could be enforced without hostility, and that respect and professionalism were non-negotiable values in any workplace. Satisfied that the lesson had been delivered, Amara prepared to leave the bank. She had achieved her goal, the immediate problem had been addressed, and a clear message had been sent. But she knew that there would be follow-up, both formally with the bank's corporate office and informally in ensuring that no similar incident could occur in the future. Leadership, she reflected, was not just about resolving problems, it was about setting standards and ensuring they were upheld consistently. As she walked toward the exit, she noticed the subtle reactions of the customers who remained. There was respect, curiosity, and a quiet acknowledgement of the authority she had exercised. Amara did not seek attention or admiration, but she recognized the significance of the moment. Her calm decisiveness had not only resolved the immediate conflict but had set a precedent for accountability and respect that would extend beyond this single encounter. Outside, the sunlight felt warm and welcoming, a sharp contrast to the tension inside the branch. Amara adjusted her bag over her shoulder, taking a deep breath and reflecting on the events that had just unfolded. The encounter had been challenging, but she had handled it with grace, clarity, and authority. Every step had been deliberate, every word carefully chosen, and the result had been a demonstration of leadership that extended far beyond a single transaction. She knew that moments like these were rare, but essential. They tested patience, composure, and the ability to act decisively. They required courage and clarity, as well as an understanding of the broader implications of one's actions. Today, Amara had faced a test and passed it, not through anger or confrontation, but through calm authority and unwavering professionalism. As she got into her car, she reflected on the lessons learned. Leadership was about presence, composure, and the ability to enforce standards without aggression. Authority was about clarity, decisiveness, and the courage to act when necessary. And professionalism was about ensuring that respect was maintained in every interaction, regardless of personal feelings or assumptions. Amara started her car, feeling a sense of quiet satisfaction. The immediate issue had been resolved, the lesson had been delivered, and her authority had been asserted. But she also knew that this was only part of her responsibility. There would be follow-up, there would be reflection, and there would be continued vigilance to ensure that professionalism and respect were upheld in every space she occupied. And as she drove away, she felt confident that she had handled the situation in the best possible way. Calm, decisive, and composed, Amara had turned a challenging encounter into a demonstration of strength, leadership, and unwavering professionalism, qualities that would serve her, her company, and anyone who witnessed her actions, for years to come. Amara walked out of the bank with a sense of calm satisfaction, her steps measured, purposeful, and confident. The incident inside had tested her patience and composure, but she had handled it with clarity, intelligence, and authority. The manager had been confronted and removed, the transaction had been completed, and the staff had received an important lesson in professionalism. Yet, as she stepped into the sunlight, Amara knew that the impact of the encounter would extend far beyond that moment. She thought about the customers who had witnessed the events. Their expressions of surprise, curiosity, and admiration lingered in her mind. Some had quietly nodded in acknowledgement, recognizing the way she carried herself. Others had whispered to each other, perhaps reflecting on the importance of authority, respect, and professional composure. Amara understood that these moments, though small, could inspire others in ways that were often unexpected. One person observing courage and clarity could carry that lesson forward into their own life or career. Her mind turned to her team at Johnson Tech Solutions. Leadership, she knew, was not just about making decisions in the boardroom or guiding a company to success. It was also about modeling behavior, demonstrating values, and showing others what accountability and professionalism looked like in action. Today's encounter had been an example she could share with her team, a story of calm decisiveness, courage, and the importance of standing firm when fairness and respect were at stake. Amara's thoughts drifted briefly to the manager she had dismissed. She did not feel satisfaction in his failure, rather, she felt clarity in her decision. He had been given the opportunity to act professionally, to fulfill his duties without hesitation, and he had failed. Her action had been necessary, not punitive. Leadership often required difficult choices, and this was one of those moments. The lesson was clear: professionalism must never be compromised, and hesitation or bias in critical situations would have consequences. She climbed into her car and settled into the driver's seat, taking a deep breath as she reflected on the day. The sunlight streamed through the windshield, warming her face, and she felt a sense of quiet accomplishment. The funds for her company were now secured, her authority had been acknowledged, and the bank had been reminded of the standards they must uphold. But more importantly, she felt that she had acted in alignment with her values: integrity, respect, and calm decisiveness. As she drove back to her office, Amara considered how small actions often had large effects. A brief encounter with a bank manager had revealed much about authority, perception, and professionalism. It had highlighted the importance of standing firm, of asserting one's rights without aggression, and of modeling composure in the face of challenge. She knew that her calm, strategic response had not only resolved the immediate issue but had also set an example for others who might face similar challenges in the future. Arriving at her office, she was greeted by her team, who had been waiting to discuss the day's plans. She entered the building with a quiet confidence, knowing that her team respected her not only for her professional achievements but also for the way she carried herself in difficult situations. Leadership, she often reminded herself, was as much about presence as it was about decision-making. How one reacted in moments of challenge could inspire, teach, and guide others more effectively than words alone. She gathered her team in the conference room, sharing the story of the bank encounter with clarity and honesty. She did not embellish the events, she recounted them exactly as they had happened, emphasizing the lessons she had drawn from the experience. Leadership, she said, is not about reacting with anger or frustration. It is about clarity, composure, and decisive action. When we encounter hesitation, bias, or doubt, it is our responsibility to respond with professionalism and integrity. Her team listened attentively, absorbing the details and the lessons. They asked questions, seeking clarity on how they could apply these principles in their own work. Amara responded thoughtfully, providing guidance and examples that were both practical and inspiring. She explained that authority and respect were earned through consistent action, clear communication, and unwavering professionalism. Hesitation or bias in critical moments could compromise outcomes, and it was the responsibility of leaders to set standards and enforce them when necessary. After the discussion, Amara returned to her office, reflecting on how the events at the bank mirrored many challenges she had faced in her career. There had been moments when investors questioned her judgment, clients doubted her decisions, and colleagues underestimated her abilities. Each of these challenges had required patience, strategy, and the ability to act decisively. Today's experience was another confirmation of the importance of those skills, reinforcing lessons she had learned over the years. She also thought about the broader impact of her actions. By addressing the situation calmly but decisively, she had demonstrated to everyone involved, staff, customers, and her team, the power of composure and authority. This was not about personal victory, it was about accountability, respect, and the maintenance of professional standards. Leadership required difficult choices, and the consequences of inaction were often greater than the discomfort of confrontation. As the day progressed, Amara found herself reflecting on the subtle ways bias and hesitation could appear in professional environments. The bank manager's initial doubt had not been malicious, it had been an instinctive hesitation influenced by assumptions. Yet those assumptions had consequences. Amara understood that addressing such moments required calm clarity, assertive action, and the courage to enforce standards. Today, she had done all of those things, and the result had been both immediate and instructive. In the days that followed, the bank branch took steps to reinforce professional standards. Staff members were reminded of the importance of verifying authority without hesitation, of providing respectful service to all clients, and of maintaining composure even when confronted with unusual situations. Amara followed up with the bank's corporate office, ensuring that her feedback was heard and that changes would be implemented to prevent similar incidents in the future. Her actions had created lasting impact, not just for her company but for the institution itself. Amara also shared the story publicly, framing it as an example of empowerment and professionalism. She wanted others to understand that challenges could be addressed without aggression, that authority and respect were earned through composure and decisive action, and that leadership required courage in difficult moments. Her story resonated widely, inspiring others to stand firm in the face of hesitation or bias, and to approach challenges with clarity and professionalism. Despite the attention the story received, Amara remained humble. She did not seek recognition or praise, she sought only to uphold standards, ensure fairness, and demonstrate the importance of integrity in professional environments. Her actions had been guided by principle, not ego, and the results reflected the power of calm, strategic action in moments of challenge. As the week progressed, Amara noticed subtle changes in the way her team approached challenges. There was more confidence, more composure, and a greater understanding of the importance of professional accountability. The lessons from the bank encounter had been internalized, and they influenced behavior, decision-making, and communication across the company. Leadership, Amara reflected, was not just about individual action, it was about inspiring and guiding others through example. Amara also reflected personally on the incident. She realized that moments of challenge were inevitable in any career or professional environment. What mattered was not the obstacle itself but how one responded. Calm authority, clear communication, and decisive action could transform even the most frustrating situations into opportunities for growth, learning, and inspiration. Today's experience had reinforced her belief in these principles, strengthening her confidence in her ability to lead, inspire, and uphold standards. By the end of the week, the incident at the bank had become a story of empowerment within her company. Staff members discussed it in meetings, using it as a reference point for decision-making, professional behavior, and leadership. It had become a teaching moment, demonstrating the importance of clarity, composure, and accountability. Amara's approach had shown that effective leadership required not only competence but also the courage to act decisively when necessary. In quiet moments, Amara reflected on the broader implications of her actions. Leadership was about setting standards, enforcing accountability, and inspiring others through example. It was about ensuring that respect and professionalism were maintained, even in situations where hesitation, doubt, or bias might arise. And it was about understanding that composure, clarity, and decisive action were not signs of aggression but of strength and intelligence. Looking back, Amara felt a sense of satisfaction and fulfillment. The bank encounter had been challenging, but she had handled it with dignity, professionalism, and authority. The manager had been held accountable, the transaction had been completed, and the staff had learned valuable lessons. Most importantly, she had demonstrated to herself and others that calm, decisive action could create meaningful change, even in moments of tension or doubt. As the sun set over the city, Amara closed her office door, reflecting on the events of the day. Leadership, she realized, was a continuous journey, one that required vigilance, composure, and the courage to act decisively. Today had been a vivid example of that truth. She had faced hesitation and doubt, and she had responded not with anger but with authority, clarity, and unwavering professionalism. The results had been immediate, instructive, and lasting. And with that reflection, Amara knew she was ready for whatever challenges lay ahead. Calm, confident, and decisive, she had turned a moment of hesitation into a story of empowerment, a lesson in leadership, and a demonstration of the enduring value of professionalism, integrity, and respect.